So we are here at Hack Seasons 2025 Singapore with Ben, co-founder and CEO of Solstice. How's it going, man?
It's going well. Happy to be here.
Yeah, lovely, lovely. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. And it's not every day I get to talk to a Solana OG. So you've probably got some battle scars, man.
Oh, we definitely do. Part of the reason why Solana is such a tight-knit community is because we went through hell together.
Yeah, understood. Hopefully we can make this heavenly. Quick interview. Not quick, but a good interview.
Exactly. That's what we need here. That's what we need.
Yeah, understood. And really, I'm just kind of curious over time, given you've been in the Solana ecosystem for so long, how has the market structure evolved? And were there any surprises along the way? I mean, clearly there were some wild events you guys built through.
Absolutely. So look, I think the Solana ecosystem is fairly unique across the other L1s for a reason. We started off with a very strong technology stack and just said, hey, let's do the L1 piece in a very cheap, fast, efficient way and beat out the other L1s at the current time frame by these metrics. Once that was available, you started to see all of these direct user-facing applications, the rise of meme coins, the rise of quick-facing user applications. Because it quickly got everybody in the ecosystem saying, oh, I can use Solana, I like Solana, it's cheap, it's fast, it's better than the other L1s, this is something I want to build on. And from there, it exploded. That's why meme culture dominated. And now over time, it's been battle tested by hundreds of billions of dollars of volume because of these user-facing applications. And the institutions are now saying, wait a minute, that's one of the best places we could possibly put our assets on chain. So it's a combination of net new capital flows, institutional participation, and retail adoption moving over into the Solana ecosystem all at once, which we're starting to see in volumes now.
Understood. Quite profound. And I guess given meme culture is so prevalent on Solana, what's the balance with DeFi, RWAs, and just like a meme coin, just pure speculation from your perspective?
So I'd say, look, a quick note on the meme coin culture, right? The best example was when Trump coin came out. That was $12 billion overnight of volume, battle tested on Solana's network, and we didn't break, we didn't fail. It worked, and Solana was ready for it. It was almost like a testing moment before a lot of the institutions started to come on board and scale. Now, very small portion of overall dominance of what Solana is looking at as rebrand into internet capital markets, as we've seen from the foundation side. Where this net new capital is coming in with is, number one, you're starting to see institutional participation in direct yield protocols like Solstice and others. We're already attracting 170 million plus of volumes over the last 24 hours just from our public launch. That's one example of lots of institutional flows in Solana. And the second is now RWAs. I've been in the space since about 2013. I've been building institutional applications on blockchain since 2015 across R3, 6 Digital Exchange, Consensus, Galaxy Digital, etc. The main unlock piece that's been missing for the last 10 years in RWAs is the DeFi unlock structure. You can tokenize anything. That's not the issue. Nobody cares about that, frankly. What matters is what you can do with those assets once they're on chain, and how do you keep them on chain in a more attractive way. So, for example, Solstice has a productized yield around the delta neutral yield products that we offer on an institutional trading strategy. That's one of many examples. Tokenized credit, loans, debt structures that you can put and now have a tokenized structure, move that deeper down the DeFi vertical chain and say, now you can do borrow lens with it. Now you can do point systems with it. You can even do looping with it. You can unlock all of these yield dynamics that were never possible before in TradFi. And that's when you start to see the true unlock of RWAs. That's what's been missing, and that's what's now just coming to light over the last year.
Understood. And I just have to say, you mentioned R3 Quarter. Wow, that's quite the throwback, man. You've been around the block for quite some time.
I have nothing positive to say about the R3 team. It was a revolutionary effort. They're really, really great team in getting the first institutional applications of blockchain. But we worked with so many R&D divisions at the time. And this was back 2015, 2016, 2017. It was R&D divisions. It wasn't front office business divisions. Now we have the bet capture. And that's why R3, for example, just announced a very exciting partnership with Solana. I just saw Dave Rudder at one of the conferences lately and was saying it's great to see you involved in the Solana ecosystem, and he's very happy to be here as well. It's just one of those things that you love to see in the industry. That's going to bring tens of billions of dollars of volume into the Solana ecosystem for all of us to benefit from.
Understood. And I guess going back in time, also as yield evolved, there's almost like a meme in 2021, given it wasn't necessarily sustainable. Now that you have these sustainable yield plays, what does that mean for institutions in retail looking to get involved and maybe even improve their Sharpe ratios with respect to sustainably managing and trying to get the best risk-adjusted returns in crypto?
That's a great point. So the way that Solstice has approached it is this. There's been delta neutral trading strategies on chain in the past, but a lot of them have capped out at 10, 20, 50 million maybe of liquidity and volume. What you needed to do is tokenize a real transparent trading strategy that has access to deep liquidity. And right now that liquidity sits on the SEX exchanges. Maybe over time, we're going to see the DEX volumes surpass the SEX volumes in that regard. But for now, you have to trade on the SEX side. So we've tokenized the platform and we've raised the bar of transparency and institutional grade readiness. That's what I love seeing in this ecosystem. To your point, is like the readiness of this yield for the institutions. We've started off with saying, hey, you can make 5,000% yield with your meme coins. Then it's moved into these kind of lower end looping that says, hey, there's 80% yields here, and there's PT points loop systems. There's all these kind of very deep degen strategies. Now we're at a point where protocols like Solstice, we can institutionalize that and say, here's a transparent, audited yields, proof of reserves for the backing of the stable coins involved, and everything that they need to see to safely deposit 8-9 figures of capital from their own books into these strategies. So we've raised the bar over the last, specifically, year and a half that we've seen these strategies really evolve. And now Solstice finally has a risk-free rate, if you want to call it, a composable yield-bearing asset that offers double-digit yields, as we've seen on the Solstice side, offering around 15% in the last 12 months and 21.5 in 2024. And to that Sharpe ratio aspect, these are delta-neutral strategies. We're one of many, but our aggregate Sharpe since inception has been about 8.09 out in the market. The reason, it's risk-off, non-directional positions. This is the future of sustainable and scalable yields. These things scale to billions, not tens of millions, and that's what the institutions need.
Understood. And speaking of institutions, I mean, real world assets are going gangbusters right now. I mean, I believe I checked this morning, it was about 32 billion, being dominated by private credit, followed by treasury bills, and then after that, commodities. Like, I'm kind of curious, how does Solstice fit into this overall picture, and even specifically on Solana?
So if you think about the whole stack, you have allocators and issuers bringing the assets on chain. Then you have stable coins that effectively are able to access those tokenized assets in a real way by getting a lot of these institutional grade stable coins, fiat-backed stable coins, to access those RWAs. On the top of the stack, you have all the different lend, borrow protocols, you have all the different true yield components. What's been missing is the stable productization of yield protocol in the middle. And so for us, we have USX as our core stablecoin. We have EUSX as the tokenized composable yield-bearing asset, getting access to that 15% I was talking about. That's one asset. Now you can take YUSX, QUSX, ZUSX, whatever it might be, to productize all of these RWAs on chain that are coming in, give them a direct route that makes them composable across the rest of the DeFi stack. That's where that missing unlock comes, because you can bring any asset on chain in 2 seconds. We've done it since 2015. That's not the hard part. The hard part is how do you unlock the additional components of DeFi with these assets? And that's where you have to tie it all together. And that's where Solstice can start to offer these, pair with these RWAs that are bringing on chain, and get real yield and real benefits that are unique to the ecosystem.
Understood. And with respect to composability of DeFi, I'm curious how you see Solstice products fitting in, and what activities are you very excited for people to use and do?
So, I mean, shout out to the Ethereum ecosystem very quickly. Well, you have to follow in the footsteps of giants here. They really championed the aspects of the Athena Aave stack, was transparently one of the best DeFi unlocks in history by bringing large-scale institutional capital and having a lending protocol for that. What the Ethereum ecosystem lacks, however, is they have fragmentation across lots of liquidity pools, applications, L2 dominance, competitiveness. Solana is very zero-sum. I can't say the same for a lot of other ecosystems in that regard. What I'm excited about on Solana is that you don't have this zero-sum dynamic. You have full composability across multiple applications, and now EUSX and USX are going to be used. We're already partnering with Jupiter, Camino, Radix, Loopscale, Radium, Orca, all of these different applications in the ecosystem to really get that deep vertical integration right. And so that's really what we're excited about. And if you want to talk about what I'm most excited about in the near term, our Camino unlock is going to be happening in the next couple of weeks as a bit of alpha that comes out in the market. We're very excited for that because that's going to unlock deep liquidity pools for people to do things directly with their USX stablecoin and the yield-bearing composable asset EUSX. That's when you start to see that 10, 15% delta neutral yield. You can start to see 20 to 30% yields in the right pools with deep liquidity on Camino.
Honestly, awesome. And you touched on a really hot topic, vertical integration. That's really something that you saw was a key component of a lot of winners throughout multiple cycles. As you think about vertical integration, how does that tie into an ideal user experience for your users?
A lot of these massive protocols, what they're starting to do is they get it right some of the way on one ecosystem, and then they quickly take the revenues and they use that for expansion across horizontal ecosystems, additional L1s. They start to move the capital outside of the L1 ecosystem. What Solstice is committed to is keeping that within the Solana ecosystem and doing it right. So the revenues consistently pass back to the ecosystem that's using the protocol, the ecosystem that's using the applications. That drives directly on-chain revenue, which is a much more important metric than TVL. On-chain revenue is everything, and that's why we've seen some of the highest application revenues across any L1 on Solana, because people like to keep things within that ecosystem and get it right. Once you get it right, then you can start to think about the farther integrations. But the vertical integration stack is where it has to begin and where it has to stay in order for Solana to succeed, in order for other L1s to follow that same model to succeed in their own stacks.
Understood. And I'm curious, with the Solana community, clearly is very, very outspoken about things that they enjoy as well as things that they don't. What's one thing you wish in the Solana ecosystem people paid more attention to?
Honestly, in the Solana ecosystem, one of the greatest things that we're starting to see is what I talked about, the composability of the assets. And I know we just spoke about that, and it might not sound controversial, but one of the biggest things that I don't think people quite grasp yet is just how composable Solana's ecosystem is. The integrations across apps is seamless. The community, one of the things I always say is culture is the catalyst with Solana. We went down to a price range of $9. We held strong. We built that back from that community. And all ships rise with a rising tide, as we always say in Solana. When we bring net new capital into Solstice, USX and EUSX get integrated across Jupiter, Radium, Orca, Camino, Radex, Loopscale, Exponent, all of these applications in the market in a very large scale way. It's immediately transparent that all of us win when one of us wins, because net new capital into the ecosystem again drives that on-chain revenue. That picture, it doesn't sound controversial, but that's the key missing lock that people don't quite realize. That in a lot of these other ecosystems, it's very fragmented. And you don't see that on Solana for a reason. And that is one of the reasons why Solana will succeed over the long run.
Understood. And since you built through a lot of trials and tribulations, what was one of the more surprising aspects of building on Solana that you maybe didn't necessarily like, but over time came to appreciate?
I would bring it back to that the meme coin example. You hate meme coins as an institutional person, right? You never like to talk about them. It's like your, family member that gets ignored at Thanksgiving, right? You're like, okay, well, we want them here, but we're not going to talk about their past and history. Meme coins are one of those things that, over time we started to realize, wait a minute, the actual use cases here was that it battle tested the ecosystem. Like I said, with the Trump coin example, $12 billion of inflow overnight. Didn't take down the protocol, didn't take down any of the individual applications that were working with it. And that just showed the battle-tested readiness of Solana. And so again, it's that aspect of battle-tested readiness for institutions, but it's also the aspect of just people like meme coins because it's one of the easiest on-ramp entries to just playing with kind of free capital in this new market of DeFi. You get to see immediate use cases. You shouldn't do them at scale. I'm not advocating for any, but it gets the application. You get to see how simple, seamless, cheap, and fast transacting financial transactions on blockchain is in total. And you see that best on Solana. And meme coins are one of those entry point examples.
Understood. And I really get to ask this question because there are so few OGs, especially as more and more people continue to pile into the space. What's something that you always knew was true, but took others a little bit to wake up to?
I recently spoke about this actually at a conference in the Philippines. The financial anonymity aspect of blockchain. So being in the space since 2013, in the early days, privacy was a feature. And privacy was one of the benefits of why you wanted to transact on blockchain. In truth, DeFi is going to be the death of financial anonymity. It's going to be more costly to be anonymous on the chain. You're going to get worse lending rates. You're going to get worse credit. You're going to get worse access to counterparties. You're going to, now with all the biometric identifications and fragmented parsing of your data, you can start to prove yourself on chain without giving up the whole lot, which is the benefit. You have to have an identity verification in order to transact. You're going to start to see the death of financial anonymity become one of the driving reasons why it becomes the most trusted financial system in history. That's one of the early misconceptions, because people still have that bad taste in their mouth in the early days of Bitcoin and the early days of a lot of these privacy coins that came out, which, I grow in love, but the bottom line is that that's not suited for the institutional and retail markets. So that's one of the misconceptions that, over time I really grew to appreciate, is the fact that, yes, you can handle a lack of privacy in the right ways, not in the CBDC model. That I think is atrocious, and that should be stopped in all forms and fashion. But what you can do is fragment your data, parse it, allow for only the information that you need to validate yourself on chain, allow it to succeed, and that will create, again, the most trusted and transparent financial system humanity has ever seen.
Oh yeah, it seems like we're finally starting to exit the dark ages of the blockchain, not Bitcoin conversation, which is very, very refreshing.
Do not even say those words. I will leave this right now. I swear to God.
Understood. So we had a great chat as we strolled down memory lane. We talked about the present, what you guys are building right now. And though the future of crypto, obviously people are very excited about at the retail level as well as institutional. For Solstice specifically, what's something that you want to be remembered for 5 years from now? It feels like an eternity in crypto.
In 5 years, I think looking back at what Solstice will accomplish since our launch and moving forward for the next few years is raising the standard for transparent and scalable yield. We're now graduating. One of the major tipping points that we're reaching right now in 2025 is murky, less transparent yield. Nobody knows where it comes from, who the team is behind the projects, where the yield is coming from, where the assets are set. Now we're getting over to that turning point where Solstice is going to be one of those leading examples that we are known for over time by setting the bar for transparency of where the assets sit, setting the bar for transparency of where the yield comes from, and allowing for trusted, scalable yields to be composed by everybody. The traditional stablecoin model, which is one of the reasons why this model came about, is breaking. And what I mean by that is the USDCs and Tethers of the world, they made their bags, they made their money in large scale ways because they kept all the yield internally for themselves. And sometimes they do redemptions and pass backs to the institutions they work with, but never to the client. And that was a very important dynamic, to not replicate the same systems of yesterday. We're not creating glorified back office for TradFi. We're creating financial freedom in a completely new ecosystem for the future. And how we do that is passing the yields back in a transparent and scalable way to every single user. And that's what Solstice should be known for in the years to come.
Understood. And speaking of the client users themselves, what are 3 words you use to describe the Solstice community?
Secure, transparent, and scalable. Scalable being the key one, because again, when you trade on deep liquidity pools, we can scale this strategy to billions in a very transparent way without having to loop back internal revenues to boost yields, etc. It's going to be in a transparent model that people can look at and say, I know where my yield is coming from, and this is where I trust my capital to sit. That's a crucial aspect to getting this right.
Understood. And what's one cohort of users or demographic that you would like to onboard via Solstice? And what do they stand to benefit from utilizing your products?
I think a lot of less privileged regions of the world outside of the G20 countries, really, you start to see drop off, not just access to money. Crypto's already done that. Stablecoin access, crypto wallets, those have been widespread over the last 5 years. What's next down the value chain for all of those users, now that they can transfer and own their own money on capital without the control of the governments, now they can start to have a great savings model, a savings account effectively, that offers them attractive yields, is kept transparently, kept within their own rights. That's going to be the next piece. So I would love to see the less privileged countries around the world that don't have the same access to the financial markets G20 countries do to start to be able to access these scalable yields in the right way. So now every single person across the world can transact money seamlessly with capital velocity and have composable yield right at their fingertips.
Understood. Ben, I just want to say you're extremely well-spoken. Your passion is radiant, and clearly you have the knowledge to get it done. I really just want to say thank you for taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you so much.